The great hall of Yirith Prime floated in the empty space between three dying stars. It was made of crystal that had been grown over millions of years. Light from the distant suns passed through its walls and created rainbows that danced across the floor. Here, the 12 most powerful species in the galaxy met to decide the fate of worlds. The Galactic Concord had ruled this part of the universe for longer than most species had existed. Their word was law. Their fleets could burn planets to ash. And today, they had gathered to discuss a problem: humans. Ambassador Sithrax of the Kreth Dominion stood at the center of the chamber. He was tall, covered in hard black shell, with 4 arms and eyes that glittered like dark jewels. His people were warriors. They had conquered 200 worlds and had never lost a war. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked together in a sound like breaking bones. The humans spread like a disease. 400 years ago, they could barely leave their own planet. Now they infest 200 star systems. They breed like insects. They trade without following our rules. They refuse to accept their place. Murmurs of agreement came from around the chamber. The other species nodded their heads, or waved their tentacles, or flashed their scales in approval. "They are young," Sithrax continued. "They are weak. But if we wait, they will become strong. We must act now. We must teach them that the galaxy has rules. We must show them what happens to species that do not obey." The Vrel ambassador, a being made of flowing silver liquid, rose to speak. "The Kreth speak truth. Humans have taken 3 mining systems that were promised to us. They said they did not know about our agreement with the Concord. They said they would not leave. They built a colony in the outer reach," added the Morath representative, a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many eyes. "That space was forbidden. We told them this. They laughed and asked who had forbidden it." More voices joined in. The humans had insulted this species. The humans had broken that treaty. The humans did not show proper respect. At the far end of the chamber, in a seat that was older than any of the species present, sat Vaelrith. Vaelrith was not like the others. Vaelrith was not made of flesh or metal or crystal. Vaelrith was made of light itself. A soft glow surrounded the ancient being, changing colors slowly, like a sunset that never ended. Vaelrith had been old when the first Concord species learned to make fire. Vaelrith had watched empires rise and fall. Vaelrith remembered things that no one else in the universe remembered. The others called Vaelrith the eldest. As the angry voices filled the chamber, Vaelrith remained silent. The ancient beings simply watched and listened, and remembered. Finally, Sithrax turned to address the whole Concord. "I call for a vote. The Kreth Dominion asks permission to lead a combined fleet against the human worlds. We will strike their largest colony. We will show them what the Concord can do. We will force them to accept protectorate status. They will obey, or they will burn." The Vrel ambassador spoke quickly. "The Vrel support this motion, as do the Morath, and the Kelish, and the Droon." One by one, the species of the Concord declared their support. Some did so eagerly, with hatred in their voices. Others spoke with less passion, but agreed that something must be done. The humans were too wild, too uncontrolled. They needed to learn their place. The vote was almost complete when Vaelrith finally moved. The ancient being rose from the crystal seat. Light rippled through Vaelrith's form like wind through water. The chamber fell silent instantly. When the eldest spoke, everyone listened. "I wish to address the Concord," Vaelrith said. The voice was soft, like distant music, but it filled every corner of the great hall. Sithrax's mandibles clicked with annoyance, but he stepped aside. Even the proud Kreth did not interrupt the eldest. Vaelrith moved to the center of the chamber. The light from the dying stars seemed to bend around the ancient being. as if even the universe paid respect. "I have existed for 3 billion of your years," Veilrith began. "I have seen much. I watched the architects build rings around stars, when your worlds were still balls of cooling rock. I watched the progenitors create life on 1,000 planets, before the silence came and took them all. I have seen species rise to greatness and fall to nothing. I have seen wars that lasted longer than your civilizations have existed." The chamber was completely quiet. No one moved. And once, long ago, I watched a small blue world on the edge of this galaxy. I watched creatures climb down from trees and stand on 2 legs. I watched them look up at the night sky with eyes full of wonder and hunger. I watched them make tools from stone and fire from wood. I watched them spread across their world like a flood. Veilrith paused. The light within the ancient being flickered, as if with old memories. "I know the humans. I have watched them since before they were humans. I have seen what they are capable of, and I am here to give you a warning." Sithrax made a sound of contempt. A warning? About the hairless apes? What could those creatures possibly do against the combined might of the Concord? "We have 3,000 warships. They have barely 200. We have weapons that can crack planets. They are still trying to understand technology that we abandoned centuries ago." Veilrith turned to look at the Kreth ambassador. For a moment, the ancient being's light turned cold, like a star about to die. "Do not provoke them." Sithrax's mandibles clicked with amusement. "That is your warning? Do not provoke them? The great eldest, 3 billion years old, and this is your wisdom?" "Yes," Veilrith said simply. "Do not provoke the humans. Leave them alone. Let them grow. Let them find their own path. In time they will learn to live with us. But if you attack them, if you hurt them, if you give them a reason to hate you—" The ancient being's voice trailed off. "What?" Sithrax demanded. "What will happen? Will they cry? Will they run? Will they die, like all the other young species who challenged the Concord?" Veilrith was silent for a long moment. Then the ancient being spoke again, and there was something in that soft voice that made several ambassadors shift nervously in their seats. "I have watched species beyond counting. Most of them, when they faced a stronger enemy, did the logical thing. They calculated the cost of war. They measured their chances. And when they saw they could not win, they surrendered. They bent. They survived. Humans are not like other species. They do not calculate cost the same way. They do not measure their chances the same way. When they believe something is right, they will fight for it. They will die for it. They will sacrifice everything for it. And if you attack their worlds, if you kill their children, if you give them something to hate—" Veilrith's form grew brighter, light pulsing through it like a heartbeat. "You will not face a species trying to survive. You will face a species trying to make you pay. And humans are very, very good at making others pay." The chamber was silent. Some of the ambassadors looked troubled. But Sithrax only laughed, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Stories," the Kreth ambassador said. "Old stories from an old being who has watched too long and done too little. The humans are nothing. They are soft and weak and short-lived. They will break like all the others." Sithrax turned back to the Concord. "I call for the vote to continue." One by one, the remaining species declared their support. The motion passed with only 2 votes against. The Concord had decided. War would come to humanity. As the ambassadors began to leave the chamber, already discussing fleet movements and battle plans, Veilrith remained still. The ancient being watched them go with light that had dimmed to a sad, pale blue. "I tried," Veilrith whispered to the empty chamber. "I tried to warn them, but they do not understand. They have never met anything like humans before. They think strength is measured in ships and weapons." The eldest turned to look out at the stars, toward a distant arm of the galaxy, where a small blue world had given birth to something extraordinary. They will learn, but the lesson will cost them more than they can imagine. In the darkness of space, 3,000 warships were already gathering. They would jump to human space within the month. They would attack the largest human colony, a world called Kepler's Hope. 12 billion humans lived there. The Concorde expected surrender within days. They had no idea what they were about to wake up. The sky above Kepler's Hope turned dark with enemy ships. 3,000 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They filled the space around the planet like a swarm of metal insects. Their hulls were black and red and silver, marked with the symbols of 8 different species. At their center flew the flagship of the Kreth Dominion, a massive vessel shaped like a curved blade. On the planet below, 12 billion humans looked up and saw death coming. Admiral Chen Wei-lin stood on the bridge of the human carrier Unconquered. She was 53 years old, with gray in her black hair and scars on her hands from a lifetime of service. She had 200 ships under her command, against 3,000. The math was simple. The math was impossible. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "the enemy fleet is broadcasting. Put it through." The main screen flickered, and the face of War Prince Sithrax appeared. His black eyes showed no emotion. His mandibles moved as he spoke, and the translator turned his clicking language into cold words. "Humans of Kepler's Hope, I am War Prince Sithrax of the Kreth Dominion, speaking for the Galactic Concorde. You have broken our laws. You have ignored our warnings. You have insulted species older than your civilization." Sithrax paused, letting his words sink in. "The time for negotiation has passed. You will surrender immediately. You will disarm all your ships and weapons. You will accept protectorate status under the Concorde. Your species will obey our rules from this day forward. If you refuse, we will destroy your fleet. Then we will burn your cities from orbit. Every human on this world will die. This is not a threat. This is a fact. You have 1 hour to respond." The screen went dark. Admiral Chen stood very still for a moment. Around her, her crew watched and waited. They were afraid. She could see it in their eyes. But they were also angry, and they were looking to her. "Get me a channel to the enemy flagship," she said quietly. "Channel open, Admiral," came the response. Chen Wei-lin straightened her uniform and looked directly at the screen. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. "War Prince Sithrax, I am Admiral Chen Wei-lin of the Human Defense Force. I have received your message." She paused for just a moment. "We decline." On the bridge of his flagship, Sithrax's mandibles clicked with surprise. "You decline? You have 200 ships. I have 3,000. You cannot win this battle." "Probably not," Admiral Chen agreed. "But you will pay for every ship you kill. You will pay in blood. And when this day is over, every human in the galaxy will know what you did here. They will remember, and they will come for you." "Foolishness," Sithrax said. "You throw away your lives for nothing." "Not for nothing," Chen replied. "For time, for hope, for every child on that planet who might escape while we fight. We are humans, War Prince. We do not surrender. We do not forget. And we never, ever stop." She cut the transmission. "All ships," she ordered. "Battle formation. Launch all fighters. Today we show them what humanity is made of." The Battle of Kepler's Hope began. What happened in the next 9 hours shocked the entire galaxy. The Concorde fleet expected the humans to fight for a while and then break. They expected surrender once the humans saw how badly they were outmatched. They expected sanity. They did not get it. Human ships flew into battle like wolves attacking a herd of elephants. They were faster and smaller than the Concorde vessels, and they used this. They darted between the larger ships, firing weapons and then disappearing before the enemy could respond. When their shields failed, they did not retreat. They flew straight at the enemy and kept firing until their ships exploded. The Creth had never seen anything like it. A human cruiser named Last Stand was hit by 4 enemy missiles. Its engines died. Its weapons went offline. Instead of surrendering, the captain ordered full power to the remaining thrusters and drove his ship directly into a Creth battlecruiser. Both ships exploded together. A human fighter pilot named James Okonkwo ran out of missiles. He ejected from his cockpit, carrying a bomb in his arms, and used his suit thrusters to fly toward an enemy vessel. He attached the bomb to their hull and died when it exploded, taking the ship's weapons array with him. A group of human marines boarded a damaged Vrel cruiser. The Vrel expected them to try to capture the ship. Instead, the marines fought their way to the reactor room and overloaded it, killing themselves and the entire enemy crew. Again and again, the humans did things that made no sense to the Concord species. They traded their lives for small advantages. They refused to retreat, even when retreat was the only logical choice. They fought like they did not understand that they were supposed to lose. 9 hours. That was how long the Battle of Kepler's Hope lasted. When it was over, Admiral Chen Wei-Lin was dead. Her ship, the Unconquered, had been destroyed while ramming a Creth command vessel. 173 of her 200 ships were gone. 50,000 human soldiers had died. But so had over 1,000 Concord ships. Nearly a third of the invasion fleet was destroyed or damaged beyond repair. War Prince Sithrax had lost more ships in one day than the Creth had lost in the last 100 years of warfare. He ordered the orbital bombardment to begin. The cities of Kepler's Hope burned. Missiles fell from the sky like rain. 12 billion humans looked up at their deaths. But not all of them died. During those 9 hours of battle, while Admiral Chen and her fleet fought and bled and died, transport ships had been loading, escape pods had been launching, hidden tunnels had been filling with refugees. 3 billion humans escaped Kepler's Hope before the bombardment ended. 3 billion survivors who watched their world burn. 3 billion witnesses who would tell the galaxy what happened. And across human space, the news spread. It spread through communication networks and word of mouth. It spread on video screens and radio waves. It spread in whispers and screams and tears. Every human heard what the Concorde had done. Every human saw the images of burning cities and dying children. Every human learned the names: Sithrax, Kepler's Hope, 9 billion dead. The Concorde expected terror. They expected humanity to realize they were beaten. They expected calls for peace, for surrender, for any way to make the killing stop. They did not understand humans at all. On Earth, the birthplace of humanity, the president addressed the planet. She was a small woman with white hair and hard eyes. She stood in front of the burned flag of Kepler's Hope, and she spoke words that would echo through history. Today, the Galactic Concorde murdered 9 billion of our brothers and sisters. They did this because they believed we would break. They did this because they thought we were weak. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every human ear in the galaxy. They were wrong. From this day forward, we are at war. Not a war for territory, not a war for resources, a war for survival, a war for justice. A war that will not end until every being who ordered this massacre has paid for what they did. To the people of the Concorde, I say this: you have made the greatest mistake in your history. You have given us something to hate. You have given us something to fight for. And we will fight. We will fight until the stars burn out. We will fight until your empires are dust. We will fight until our children's children have forgotten why we started. And then we will teach them to fight again. You wanted to break us. Instead, You have made us into something you cannot imagine. You have made us into your doom. Across human space, the call went out. Enlistment centers opened and immediately overflowed. Factories stopped making consumer goods and started making weapons. Scientists abandoned their research to design new ways to kill. Farmers grew food for armies. Teachers taught children to hate the enemy. Humanity did not fracture under the blow. Humanity crystallized, like carbon under pressure becoming diamond. Like steel in the forge, humanity became something harder and sharper than it had ever been before. On Urith Prime, Veilrith watched the reports coming in from Kepler's Hope. The ancient beings saw the footage of burning cities. The eldest heard the human president's speech, and Veilrith saw the numbers that the Concord was beginning to fear. Human ship production had increased by 300% in 1 week. Enlistment was up by 5,000%. The humans were not building a defense force. They were building an army of revenge. Veilrith's light dimmed to the color of old blood. I warned them, the eldest whispered. I told them not to provoke the humans. I told them what would happen. In the distance, human war drums were beginning to beat. The sound would grow louder with each passing day. It would grow until it drowned out everything else. They have awakened something terrible, Veilrith said. And now everyone will pay the price. The war had only just begun. 2 years had passed since the burning of Kepler's Hope. 2 years of war. 2 years of blood and fire and death. The Galactic Concord had expected the war to be over in months. They had expected humanity to see reason. They had expected surrender. Instead, they got something else entirely. The council met again on Urith Prime, but the mood was very different from the last time. The ambassadors did not speak with pride or anger. They spoke with fear. How is this possible? Demanded the Vrel representative. The silver liquid of its body churned with anxiety. We destroyed their largest colony. We killed 9 billion of them. They should have broken. They should have, agreed the Morath ambassador, its many eyes blinking rapidly. Every projection, every calculation, every model said they would surrender within 6 months. Instead, they have grown stronger. War Prince Sithrax was there too, but he was no longer laughing. His black shell had been scarred in a battle 3 months ago, when a human strike force had attacked his flagship. He had barely escaped alive. Their ships are everywhere, Sithrax said. His voice was quiet, almost confused. We destroyed their fleet at Kepler's Hope. 2 years later, they have more ships than before the war started. How do they build so fast? No one had an answer. The truth was something the Concord species could not understand. Humans did not just build ships. They threw their entire civilization into the war. Factories ran day and night. Workers slept in shifts. Children learned to assemble weapons in school. Old people came out of retirement to work in shipyards. Every human who could contribute, did contribute. And those who could not find something to make, found something to fight. But it was not just their numbers that frightened the Concord. It was what the humans were doing with their technology. At the start of the war, human weapons were good, but not great. Their ships were fast, but not particularly strong. Their shields were adequate, but not impressive. The Concord had centuries of advancement over them. That gap was closing with terrifying speed. Human scientists worked without rest. They studied captured Concord technology and figured out how it worked. They did not just copy it, they improved it. They combined ideas from different species and created something new. They asked questions that the older species had stopped asking long ago. The first quantum disruptors appeared on human ships within 8 months of the war's start. These weapons ignored shields completely, striking directly at the hull beneath. the Concord had been working on similar technology for decades. The humans had developed it in less than a year. Then came the adaptive missiles, weapons that learned from each failed attack and changed their approach. Then came the ghost drones, unmanned ships that were almost impossible to detect until they were already firing. Then came the bioweapons, carefully designed diseases that affected only specific species. The humans were not just catching up, they were pulling ahead. The council summoned Veilrith. The eldest came, moving slowly, light flickering with something that might have been sadness or might have been grim satisfaction. "Eldest," the Vrel ambassador said, "we need answers. You warned us about the humans. You told us not to provoke them. We did not listen, and now we are losing a war we thought we could not lose. Tell us what we are facing. Tell us how to stop them." Veilrith was silent for a long moment. Then the ancient being began to speak. "I will tell you a story about the world where humans evolved. A story about what made them what they are." The council listened. Long ago, on that small blue planet, the ancestors of humans were weak creatures. They had no claws to fight with. They had no fangs to bite with. They had no shells to protect them. They were slow and soft and small. The world they lived in was full of predators. Great cats that could kill with a single bout. Packs of wolves that hunted together. Bears that could crush bones with their paws. By every measure, the ancestors of humans should have died out. They should have become food for stronger creatures. But they did not die. They survived. And do you know how? Veilrith paused, looking around the chamber at the frightened ambassadors. They ran. The ancestors of humans developed a way of hunting that no other creature on their world could match. They would find their prey and begin to chase it. Slow, steady. They would chase their prey for hours, for days. They would not stop. Other predators would give up when they got tired. The ancestors of humans did not give up. They kept running, and eventually their prey would collapse from exhaustion. The slow, weak, soft creatures would catch animals that could outrun them in a sprint, because they simply would not stop chasing. This is called persistence hunting, and it is the key to everything humans are. Sithrax clicked his mandibles impatiently. What does ancient hunting have to do with this war? Everything, Veilrith said. That persistence, that refusal to stop, that ability to keep going long after any reasonable creature would give up, is written into human bodies and minds. It is what they are. It is what they have always been. Other species fight wars rationally. They calculate the cost. They measure the benefit. When the cost becomes too high, they make peace. They survive to fight another day. Humans do not calculate the same way. They can, but they often choose not to. When humans believe something is right, when they believe something is worth fighting for, they will not stop. They will not calculate. They will keep fighting until they win, or until every last one of them is dead. You killed 9 billion of them at Kepler's Hope. Any rational species would have seen that as proof they could not win. Any rational species would have surrendered. Humans looked at those 9 billion dead and decided they would rather die than let that sacrifice mean nothing. The chamber was silent. The ambassadors stared at Veilrith with growing horror. "But there is something worse," Veilrith continued. "Something you have not yet understood." "What could be worse?" whispered the Morath ambassador. "You have given them the most dangerous motivation any species can have. You have given them revenge." Veilrith's light grew brighter, casting strange shadows across the crystal walls. Humans are capable of great kindness. They are capable of love and compassion and mercy. They build beautiful things. They help creatures weaker than themselves. They dream of peace and prosperity for all. But they are also capable of terrible hatred. When they are hurt, when they are wronged, when their children are killed and their homes are burned, something changes in them. They become something else entirely. Other species seek victory. Humans seek payment. They want the beings who hurt them to suffer. They want them to understand what they have done. They want revenge not just for themselves, but for their dead. They carry their anger like a flame that never goes out. You did not just start a war with humanity. You gave them a cause. You gave them 9 billion reasons to hate you. You gave them dead children and burning cities, and the knowledge that you did it because you thought they were weak. They will not stop until you have paid for that. Not until the last of you surrenders. Not until your empires are broken. Not until their dead are avenged. Vaelrith turned to look directly at Sithrax. You wanted to teach them their place. Instead, you taught them to hate. And now you will learn what that means. The council sat in stunned silence. For the first time since the war began, they truly understood what they were facing. Not just an enemy. Not just a species fighting for survival. A force of nature. A tide of rage that would not stop until it had washed over everything in its path. Outside the great hall of Urith Prime, the stars burned cold and distant. And somewhere out there, human fleets were moving. Human soldiers were training. Human scientists were building new weapons. They were coming, and they would not stop until they were done. 5 years after the war began, the galaxy had changed. Human fleets now outnumbered the Concord forces. Human territory had grown, while the old empires shrank. Human weapons were the most advanced in known space. But numbers and technology were only part of the story. The Concord species were losing because they could not understand how humans fought. The Kreth were master strategists. They had studied war for thousands of years. They knew every tactic, every formation, every trick. They could predict what any rational enemy would do and counter it before it happened. Humans were not rational. General Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Remember Kepler, and watched the enemy fleet on his screen. The Kreth had set a perfect trap. They had positioned their ships in a classic formation that would crush any force that attacked it. Every military textbook in the galaxy said the same thing. Do not attack a fleet in the Iron Shield formation. Wait them out. Find another way. Sir, his tactical officer said, the Kreth are expecting us to retreat or try to flank them. Their formation is designed to counter both options. I know, Stone said. He was a tall man with gray eyes that had seen too much death. Before the war, he had been a history teacher. Now he commanded the largest human fleet in the sector. They've studied our tactics. They know what we should do. So what do? Stone smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. We do something stupid. The human fleet attacked directly into the heart of the Kreth formation. It was exactly what the enemy wanted. It was exactly what no rational commander would do. The Kreth closed their trap, surrounding the human ships from all sides. And then the humans showed them something new. At a signal from Stone, half of his ships suddenly stopped fighting the Kreth. Instead, they turned their weapons on themselves. They overloaded their reactors and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The explosions were not random. They were precisely calculated. Each self-destruction took out 3 or 4 Kreth ships. Each sacrifice opened a gap in the enemy formation. The surviving human ships flew through those gaps, firing everything they had. They did not try to escape. They did not try to survive. They did what humans had learned to do better than any species in the galaxy. They made the enemy pay. When the battle was over, both fleets were destroyed. But the Kreth had lost their entire force. The humans had won by losing. They had traded their lives for victory. For the first time, the elder species began to truly fear. On the Kreth homeworld, War Prince Sithrax watched the reports with growing dread. He had started this war. He had ordered the attack on Kepler's Hope. He had been so certain that the humans would break. Now his people were breaking instead. Human fleets had pushed deep into Kreth space. They did not just defeat the Kreth military. They freed the slave races that the Kreth had conquered over centuries. They gave weapons to species that had been under Kreth control for generations. They turned the Dominion's own subjects against them. The humans did not fight like conquerors. They fought like liberators. They told the enslaved species that they understood what it was like to face a stronger enemy. They told them that the Kreth were not invincible. They told them that freedom was worth fighting for. And the slaves believed them. The Kreth Dominion, which had never known defeat, began to collapse from within. Sithrax made a desperate choice. He gathered every ship his people had left, every warrior who could fight, and launched an attack on the human supply lines. If he could cut off their resources, maybe he could slow them down. Maybe he could force a peace. The attack failed. Human patrols intercepted his fleet before they reached the supply lines. Sithrax fought bravely, but bravery was not enough. His flagship was disabled. His fleet was scattered. He was captured alive. The humans did not kill him. This surprised many people, including Sithrax himself. He expected to be executed. He had ordered the deaths of 9 billion humans. He deserved death, and he knew it. Instead, the humans put him on trial. The trial was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Sithrax stood in a courtroom on Earth, surrounded by human judges and human lawyers and human witnesses. The survivors of Kepler's Hope testified. They showed images of burning cities and dying children. They read the names of the dead. It took 3 days just to read the names. Sithrax was found guilty of genocide. The sentence was not death. The sentence was life imprisonment on a frozen asteroid at the edge of human space. Complete isolation. No contact with any other Kreth. No connection to the hive mind that all Kreth shared. For a Kreth, this was worse than death. To be alone, truly alone, forever. Sithrax screamed when he heard the sentence. He begged for execution. The humans refused. "Death is easy," the human judge said. "You gave our people no easy escape. We will give you none. You will live with what you did. You will have centuries to think about the 9 billion lives you ended. And when you finally die, alone in the cold and the dark, you will know that you brought it on yourself." Sithrax was taken away. He would never see another Kreth again. The war continued, but the end was near. One by one, the conquered species surrendered. The Vrel gave up first, their liquid bodies flowing into submission. The Morath followed, their many eyes dim with defeat. The others came after, each seeking peace, before the humans came for them. The humans accepted their surrenders, but the terms were harsh. Reparations, huge amounts of resources, would flow to human worlds to help rebuild what the war had destroyed. Territory. The conquered species would give up systems they had claimed for centuries. And one unusual demand that confused many of the aliens. Memory. The humans demanded that every species teach their children what happened at Kepler's Hope. They demanded that the massacre be remembered. They demanded that schools across the galaxy tell the story of the 9 billion who died. Why? Asked a Vrel diplomat during the negotiations. Why does this matter so much to you? You have won. You have your revenge. Why do you need us to remember? The human negotiator was a woman named Sarah Chen. She was the daughter of Admiral Chen Weilin, who had died defending Kepler's Hope. She was also the niece of 3 people who had burned in the bombardment. She looked at the Vrel with eyes that held no hatred, only a deep and terrible sadness. "Because we never forget," she said. "Our dead stay with us forever. We carry them in our hearts. We speak their names. We remember what was done to them and why. We want you to understand that about us. We want you to know that humans remember. Every crime, every kindness, every promise, every betrayal. We remember it all. And we want you to remember Kepler's hope, so that you never do something like this again. We want your children's children to know what happens when you underestimate humanity. We want them to learn from your mistake, not because we want revenge on them, because we want peace with them. True peace, built on understanding. And understanding begins with memory. The Vrel agreed to the terms. So did the others. The war was over. Humanity had won. But victory, Sarah Chen knew, was just the beginning. The hard part was what came after. The hard part was building something that would last. On Yrith Prime, Vaelrith watched the peace treaties being signed. The ancient being felt something that might have been hope. The humans had not destroyed their enemies. They had not committed genocide in return for genocide. They had been harsh, yes. But they had also shown mercy. Maybe, Vaelrith thought, the best parts of humanity had survived the war after all. Maybe there was still a chance for something good to come from all this death. The eldest would wait and see. That was what the eldest did best. Wait and watch and hope. 50 years had passed since the end of the war. The galaxy was a different place now. A young Kreth named Thesic walked through the crystal halls of Yrith Prime. He was a historian, born long after the war ended. He had never known the Old Dominion. He had grown up in a galaxy where humans were the dominant species, where the Kreth were just another race among many. But he remembered the stories. Every Kreth child learned them. The glory of the Old Dominion, the shame of defeat, the name of Sithrax, who had doomed their people with his pride. Thesic had come to Yrith Prime with questions that had bothered him since he was young, questions about why the war had happened, questions about what the Kreth could have done differently. He had come to ask the eldest. Vaelrith sat in the same ancient seat, in the same crystal chamber where the war had been decided 50 years ago. The light that made up the eldest's body was dimmer now, flickering more than before. Even beings of starlight grew old eventually. But Vaelrith's mind was still sharp. The eldest saw the young Kreth approaching and felt something like curiosity. "Thesic of the Kreth," Vaelrith said, "I know why you have come. You want to understand." Thesic bowed his head in the traditional greeting. "Eldest, I have studied the war my entire life. I have read every record, every report, every testimony, but I still do not understand." "What do you not understand? Were the humans always destined to win? Was their victory written in the stars? Were we doomed from the moment we attacked them?" Vaelrith was silent for a long time. The ancient being's light shifted through colors, pale blue, and deep gold, and soft white. "Nothing is destined," Vaelrith finally said. "Nothing is written. The universe does not care about victory or defeat. It simply is." "Then what happened? Why did we lose? Come, sit with me. I will tell you." Thesic moved closer, settling onto a crystal seat near the eldest. The light from the dying stars outside cast strange shadows through the hall. 50 years ago, Vaelrith began, your people had every advantage. More ships, more experience, more technology. If you had fought any other species, you would have won easily. You would have crushed them and added their worlds to your dominion. But you did not fight any other species. You fought humans, and you made a mistake that decided everything. What mistake? You attacked them first. Thesic's mandibles clicked in confusion. But we had to attack first. They were growing too strong. If we had waited, they would have become a threat. Would they? Vaelrith asked. Were they really a threat before the war? They were young and brash, yes. They did not follow your rules. They did not bow to your traditions. But they were not your enemies. They had never attacked any Concord world. They had never killed any Concord citizen. They were annoying. They were disrespectful. They were different. But they were not dangerous. Not until you made them so. Thesic was quiet. This was not what he had expected to hear. I watched the humans for thousands of years, Veilrith continued. I watched them before they discovered fire. I watched them build their first cities. I watched them reach the stars, and I learned something about them. Humans are not one thing. They are many things. They contain opposites within themselves. They can be cruel and kind, violent and peaceful, selfish and generous. What they become depends on what they experience. What they become depends on what others show them. You showed them cruelty. You killed their children. You burned their cities. You tried to break them because you thought they were weak. And in doing so, you brought out the worst in them. You created the enemy you feared. You made them into warriors. You made them into conquerors. You made them into the thing they became. Veilrith's light dimmed for a moment, as if with old grief. That is the true tragedy. Not that you lost the war, but that you could have avoided it entirely. You could have welcomed humans into the galactic community. You could have traded with them. You could have been patient. In time, they would have learned to live with you. They would have mellowed. They would have become just another species among many. Instead, you attacked. And now the galaxy is theirs. Thesic sat in silence, processing what he had heard. It was strange to think about. The Great War, the fall of the Dominion, the death of billions, all of it could have been avoided. Is there hope for us now? He asked finally. For the Kreth? For the other species that lost the war? Veilrith's light brightened slightly. Let me tell you another story. A story that happened just last year. A Kreth colony ship was found drifting in the void between stars. Its engines had failed. Its power was dying. 3,000 of your people were aboard, including many younglings. They were dying slowly in the cold and the dark. Thesic knew this story. Every Kreth knew it. A human patrol ship found them. Do you know what the humans did? They saved them, Thesic said quietly. Yes. They towed the colony ship to safety. They shared their food, their medicine, their power. The human captain, a woman named Rivera, worked for 3 days without sleep to keep your younglings alive. When one of the Kreth asked why she was helping them, she said something that I will never forget. Veilrith paused, letting the moment stretch. She said, "We cannot leave children to die in the dark, no matter whose children they are." Thesic felt something move in his chest. It might have been shame. It might have been hope. That is why I warned the council not to provoke the humans, Veilrith said, not because I feared what they would do to you in victory, but because I feared what you would do to them. I feared what you would turn them into. Humans are not a plague or a weapon. They are a mirror. They reflect what is shown to them. You showed them cruelty, and they showed you what cruelty truly means. But they are also capable of extraordinary kindness, of sacrifice, of love. Captain Rivera and her crew did not have to save that colony ship. They could have let your people die. Your species killed billions of their people. They had every reason to hate you. But they chose mercy. They chose compassion. They chose to see your younglings as children, not as enemies. That is the true nature of humanity. Both things at once, always. The capacity for terrible violence and beautiful kindness existing side by side. They carry both within them, always at war. Veilrith turned to look directly at the young historian. The question was never what humanity would become. The question was always what others would inspire them to be. We chose poorly once. I suggest we do not make that mistake again. Thesic sat for a long time after Veilrith finished speaking. The dying stars turned slowly outside the crystal walls. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled the trade routes. Human colonies spread across worlds that had once belonged to the Concord. Human children played in the light of suns that Kreth warriors had once claimed as their own. But also, out there, human doctors healed Kreth patients. Human teachers taught Kreth students. Human merchants traded fairly with Kreth businesses. The conquerors had not tried to destroy the conquered. They had tried to build something new. Maybe, Thesic thought, that was the real lesson. He returned to Kreth space and spent the next 10 years writing a book. It became the most widely read text in the galaxy, required reading for every species in what was now called the Human Concordance. It was translated into 300 languages. It was taught in schools on 1,000 worlds. The title was simple: They Remember. And across the galaxy a new generation learned the lesson that Veilrith had tried to teach 50 years ago. Humans do not start fights. They do not seek war. They want to build, to create, to explore, to grow. But if you attack them, if you hurt their children, if you burn their homes and give them a reason to hate, they will come for you. They will not stop, and they will never ever forget. On the frozen asteroid at the edge of human space, an old Kreth sat alone in the darkness. Sithrax had lived for 50 years in complete isolation. He had grown old. He had gone mad and found sanity again, and gone mad once more. But in his clearest moments, he understood. He had been warned. The eldest had said, "Do not provoke them." He had not listened, and now he would spend eternity paying for that mistake. In the cold and the silence, Sithrax whispered the same words over and over, the words he wished he had listened to, the words that would haunt him until he finally died. Do not provoke them. Do not provoke them.